If you want to get ahead of 99% of people in the next 6 to 12 months, I don't think the answer is working 18 hours a day, waking up at 4 a.m., or finding some secret productivity system. Most people already know what they should be doing. The problem is that they're not clear enough about where their current life is actually taking them. One of the useful things that you can do right now is to sit down and become brutally aware with these two things. What you don't want and what your life will look like if you keep doing exactly what you're doing today. Same habits, same environment, same spending, same health, same friends, same work ethic. Just fast forward it 5 or 10 years. If nothing changes, do you actually like where the road ends? I think clearly this is easier than asking, what do I want? Because that question can be surprisingly difficult. You can say you want freedom, success, more money, better health, but those words are so broad that they don't really tell you anything. On the other hand, it's much easier to recognize a life you don't want, because you can see example of it around you all the time. You can look at someone 10 years ahead of you and ask, not in a judgmental way, but almost like you're studying data. What decision probably created this life? If someone is constantly stressed about money, maybe there were years of lifestyle inflation behind it. If someone hates their work but feels trapped, maybe they stopped learning new skills a long time ago. If someone's health slowly declined, maybe it wasn't one huge mistake, but thousands of small decisions that look harmless at the time. The scary part about life, usually you don't destroy it in one dramatic moment. You drift. And this is where I think the idea of anti-vision is incredibly powerful. Most of us have heard about creating a vision for the future. Maybe you write down the house you want, the career you want, the body you want, the lifestyle you want. I actually think that's pretty useful, but I don't think that's strong enough to make me want to change my bad habits. Just to be frank with you guys. So instead, try creating the opposite first. Sit down with your notebook for 30 minutes and describe the life you absolutely refuse to live. Imagine yourself 5 or 10 years from now if you keep making the same decision. Maybe your anti-vision is being financially successful but having no time for your kids. Maybe it's staying in a job you hate because you never built the courage to start something else. Maybe it's becoming so unhealthy that everyday life starts feeling difficult. Maybe it's having a lot of followers, contacts, and people who know your name, but nobody you can actually call when life gets difficult. When you write this down properly, this will make you uncomfortable. That discomfort is the point. Not because you should live in fear, but because negative emotion can actually be useful when they give you information. We're so obsessed with trying to feel good all the time that sometimes we forget fear, frustration, even anger can tell us something important. The idea of being unhealthy in 10 years scares you. Maybe that's useful. The idea of wasting another 5 years in the same situation frustrates you. Maybe you should listen to that. The problem isn't negative emotion. The problem is letting it turn into anxiety without using it to change anything. So once you've written your anti-vision, flip the page and create the opposite. Now the real vision becomes much easier to see. If you don't want to be financially trapped, what would financial security actually look like? If you don't want to lose your health, what does being strong and healthy mean to you? If you don't want your work to control in your entire life, what skills or business would you give more leverage? This is why I like starting from the anti-vision. Not trying to magically invent your dream life from a blank page. You're taking the things you already know you don't want and intentionally moving in the opposite direction. But this is also where a lot of self-improvement advice stops. You create the vision, feel motivated for 3 days, maybe a new Notion dashboard, and then life slowly goes back to normal. The missing part is turning that vision into something boring enough to repeat every day. Because your future isn't really built by the goals you write down once. It is built by what your normal Tuesday looks like. What time do you wake up? What do you eat most days? Do you train? What do you spend your first few hours working on? How much time do you spend consuming versus creating? Who do you talk regularly? What are you doing when nobody's checking? Those things doesn't sound or looks impressive, but you know what? That's your future in disguise. I think one of the reasons people struggle with this because we become addicted to novelty. We're always looking for the next strategy, the next app, the next workout, the next business model, the next productivity race, and sometimes the truth is always less exciting. You probably already know the 5 boring things that will improve your life if you consistently did them for the next 3 years. Look at almost anyone who becomes genuinely good at something. Their life is surprisingly repetitive. A professional athlete doesn't invent a completely new training philosophy every Monday. A great writer still sits down and writes. A great chef still spends years improving basic techniques. People become masters because they repeat fundamentals long after everybody else has become bored bored with them. And I think this is where disappearing becomes useful too. Not disappearing literally, not cutting off every friend and moving into a cabin somewhere, but disappearing from the things that are constantly stealing your attention without giving anything meaningful back. You might need to disappear from unnecessary drama, you might need to reduce social media, you might need to spend less time around people who make you fall back into habits you're trying to leave behind. Attention is limited, and most people underestimate how much mental energy they waste every day. You wake up, check up your phone, compare yourself to somebody, think about a random moment, reply to messages that don't matter, scroll for 40 minutes. By the time you actually really want to work, half of your brain already dead. Sometimes improving your life isn't about adding more habits, it's about removing the things that keep draining you. When you remove that noise, you suddenly have more energy for the things you said were important. More energy to train, learn, spend time with your family, and also work on something meaningful. Do that for 6 months, and people might think you become more disciplined, but maybe you didn't magically become disciplined. Maybe you simply stop making your life unnecessarily difficult. There is one more is so important here, and probably it's the hardest part. Stop constantly asking when is the result come. We do this with everything. You start going to the gym and immediately ask when you will see the abs. You start YouTube and ask how many videos before you hit 100,000 subscribers. You start a business and wonder when you will make your first billion. The problem is sometimes the truthful answer is longer than you want to hear. And once you hear 3 years, suddenly the thing that excited you yesterday feels less attractive. But mastery doesn't really care about your preferred timeline. Building anything meaningful usually takes longer than expected because there's so much trial and error involved. You try something, it doesn't work. You adjust and you try again. That is not a detour from your process. That is the process. I like thinking about life like you're a scientist and you're the experiment. You don't need the perfect plan. You need a direction, a hypothesis, and willingness to keep adjusting. Maybe you try one career and realize it's not for you. Maybe one business fails. Maybe one training approach doesn't work. Fine, you learn, you update, and you move on. Because the real danger isn't choosing the wrong path once. The real danger is never choosing at all and letting life makes every decision for you. So if you want to get ahead of the 99% of people for the next 6 to 12 months, I will start much more simpler than people expect. Figure out the life that you absolutely don't want. Get clear on what the opposite looks like. Remove the things that keep pulling you backward. Then identify the boring fundamentals. If repeated for long enough, will almost force your life to improve. And spoiler alert, you will not completely transform your life in the next 6 to 12 months. Just being honest. But absolutely, you can be the best version of you. Remember this, most people don't lose because they don't know what to do. They lose because they stop doing once it gets boring. Stay classy.